Hi, how you doing? It's Jim. Welcome back to the channel. Welcome to the channel if this is your first time here. Now, usually we're listening to music, and today, of course, I have been listening to music, but I also thought I was going to make a video in response to a lot of videos that a lot of other people have been making, and it is the top 10 or the most important, the most influential, the most significant records of my life. And Scott's been doing it over on the Prog Corner, Notes Reviews has been doing it, Neve has done it over at the Prog Nerd, and loads and loads of people have done it. And to be fair, I did this a long time ago, but I did it in written form. I did it in my blog, and I re-released it maybe 6 months ago in my blog just to put it out there. But I don't think I've ever made a video about it. I've made videos before about what are my favourite albums I've heard since starting the channel and stuff like that. These are all pre-YouTube channel. So this is me in the olden days, as it were. So starting from about 1980, when I first started discovering music, through till, I don't know, mid-90s perhaps? I don't think there's anything beyond the 90s. The first thing I'm going to bring up is this seminal album. Not just seminal album for me, seminal album for rock, metal generally, The Number of the Beast. This is the first Iron Maiden album to feature Bruce Dickinson on vocals. I was 12 when this came out. I absolutely remember with clarity the moment I discovered this band. It was that we had a program in the UK called Top of the Pops that came out on a Thursday night, and there's the usual chart stuff on there, which I can't even remember what it was, but it just music that sort of passed me by. And then they featured The Number of the Beast, Iron Maiden, and I could not believe what I was listening to. And when I went to school the next day, all my friends, exactly the same, they said could not believe this band that we'd all just heard on Top of the Pops. And literally overnight, we all became fans of the band. And we decided we were going to form our own band, of course, and all that sort of stuff as part of that. But The Number of the Beast by Iron Maiden is absolutely the first and most important album of my childhood and of my sort of formative years, and it kind of shaped my listening and thoughts on music for a long time to come. Shortly after that, I discovered AC/DC. Now, AC/DC is a sort of different kettle of fish altogether. This, everybody knows this is probably like the second or third biggest selling album of all time, isn't it? Beaten only, I think, by Thriller by Michael Jackson, and maybe something else by, I don't know who, but it's huge. And this is it's much more sort of rock and roll than Iron Maiden. But I discovered them after I discovered Iron Maiden, and even though this album is 2 years older than Number of the Beast, I didn't hear it when it first came out. I had to go back in time to discover it. And then subsequently to that, I learned all about Bon Scott, how he had died, earlier AC/DC. I followed them for a bit. I never sort of had the same feeling with them again much after that. I think for those about to rock, I really enjoyed, and there are a few songs here and there beyond that. But it was really the first albums up to Back in Black, which were really important to me. But it was Back in Black itself, which is a pivotal, awakening moment for me for how good proper rock and roll guitar music could be. I know it's very samey, it's not very sophisticated music by any stretch of the imagination, but there is no one does it better than this band. I know people say Led Zeppelin, and absolutely, of course they are, but for straight, no complication, hard rocking rock and roll, it's AC/DC, and they've been huge for all this time for a reason, and that is it, isn't it? 1985, Sanctuary by The Cult. Well, the album is called Love, but it had the song Sanctuary. This is absolutely phenomenal record. It's a gatefold. It preceded Electric, which is when they became the sort of huge globe-straddling rock and roll behemoth. At this point, they were still a vaguely goth rock band, and they were really, really interesting. This record is just so good. It's got great tracks on here. Nirvana, Big Neon, Glitter, Love Itself, Brother Wolf, Sister Moon. That track, I've played that so many times. In fact, I think that even features on the intro to the channel. And I did a video on that maybe 5 years ago as well. But yeah, and then obviously you've got She Sells Sanctuary on here, and Rain, and Phoenix, Revolution. This is one of those great albums, and I discovered it when I was 15, and it just, again, changed everything for me. It took the preconception that I had for what rock and metal was, with things like Iron Maiden and with AC/DC, a little bit of Metallica is coming through and stuff like that, and thinking, actually, it can be British and it can be less heavy, but still be a heavy message and be a valid message, and I love this. So where other people maybe listen to the things like The Cure and the Smiths and stuff like that, it just didn't do it for me at all. But the Cult, they were the band. They were the band for me. Now, a year or two later, I discovered this. This is This is the album Infected. Of course, they've had many other albums. Mind Bomb is a second favourite of mine, but this one will always be my favourite The record, and in my top 10 records of my formative years. It helped me to realise again, in the same way as The Cult did, that really sophisticated, heavy, dark messages didn't have to have really heavy, dark guitars to deliver it. As a social snapshot of the world, of the UK in particular, this is grey and dark and heavy and foreboding, and it points the finger in so many places. And it's not a difficult listen, but it's a difficult message to take in, because it is very cutting and it's very, very good. It sounds quite 80s now, actually, going back to it. The drum sounds, the drum machine sounds, I should say. And it was almost going to be a toss-up between this and New Order with their album Substance, which is kind of like compilation. But I think this one sort of won over on it because it is just so different and bleak and brilliant. Oh. At a similar time, I then travelled back in time in my listening, and that's when I heard this bad boy for the first time. And it's the first Pink Floyd I ever really knew as well. I think I'd heard Another Brick in the Wall, just this song, but I don't think I'd heard the album, and I certainly hadn't heard any other Pink Floyd. And I know people will say, well, that's really? Well, how old were you? 16 maybe? So 1986, if you weren't a little bit older, perhaps this wasn't the band you were listening to, but this was old. This is 1978 or 79 this came out. And I absolutely would not have been listening to this at that age, because I was an 8-year-old and it wasn't accessible to me. For me, I know I've now gone back and I find sort of Dark Side of the Moon, Wish You Were Here, Animals, just sublime, incredible records. But I didn't know them, I only knew this. And still now, this is a really important record. And it is the one that introduced me to Pink Floyd, and along with Rush, I think helped introduce me to progressive music. I think the other sort of Pink Floyd records are massively important to me, and I know are celebrated more so than this record. But this is the one. This is the one that changed everything for me. This is what got me interested in Pink Floyd, what took me on the adventure that I then discovered Shine On You Crazy Diamond, and Wish You Were Here and Have a Cigar and Money and The Great Gig in the Sky and Sheep and Dogs and all the other amazing songs that came along. I never would have had them or discovered them if it had not been for this. Say what you like about Roger Waters, he writes some amazing, amazing music. Next up, again, this is electronic. It is Depeche Mode and the album Violator. So I'd changed school by this stage. I was 16, 17, different group of friends. I had a very close friend and we made music together, and he was heavily into synths and the burgeoning sort of samples and what you could do with MIDI and stuff like that, and I was absolutely intrigued, and I just wanted to learn everything about it because it just seemed, this is crazy, you can make music by yourself, make it sound amazing, and I wanted to learn everything. And he was massively into this band Depeche Mode, and I listened to it and I thought, oh, this is so good. And again, I think there's a theme here, apart from maybe the AC/DC, everything is quite dark and bleak, the music. It is with Depeche Mode as well. I know people think of them as being sort of a chart pop band, but they're not really. I mean, they are, they've charted and done very, very well, but the lyrical content of their music is quite bleak. Listen to Personal Jesus, you know, listen to A Policy of Truth, Waiting for the Night, Enjoy the Silence. I mean, these are just, they sound clean and polished, but they are so deep and dark. It's incredible music. I'm using superlatives all over the place here, aren't I? Right, we've left the sort of the rock and metal world behind, because as I was getting older, as I was getting towards my teenage years and early 20s, my listening had changed completely. So the Depeche Mode, I think it was a bit of a tipping point, and I really was getting far more interested in what electronic music could do. What it seemed to be far more interesting and exciting, and the possibilities that were coming along with it were extraordinary. And there are a few albums which exemplify that. The first is this. It's changed my world entirely, and it's just extraordinary. The Orb, it's their first album, The Orb's Adventures Beyond the Ultra World. If you want to understand how to use a sampler as an incredibly creative instrument, and you want to understand how to use the studio as an incredibly creative instrument, and you want to have unique, mind-bending, sensational, just music, this album, you couldn't start in a better place. It absolutely is just phenomenal. This came out in the early 1990s and is the collaboration between Alex Patterson and a guy called Thrash. Now, he didn't stay in the band I'm not sure what happened there. I think it wasn't a happy parting of companies, but there's also one of the guys from KLF was involved with it as well, and the KLF have got a brilliant album. I know they were sort of a bit of a chart band as well, but before they were that, they had this fantastic album called Chill Out, which is basically one huge long track for a 70-minute CD, and it is just ambient music, different sounds recorded, field recordings all blended together with beats coming in and dropping out and stuff. And that was massively influential on this, but I didn't hear it. I heard this first. This is the one that got me, and you need to listen to it. You absolutely need to listen to it. The Orb's Adventures Beyond the Ultra World. Now, we're staying with the world of electronic because that's where my head was at this stage, and this still remains to this day one of the greatest electronic albums ever made. It's dance music, granted. It's the record that makes you realise that electronic dance music can be intelligent, can be super creative. If you listen to it now, it just sounds very similar to a lot of other stuff. Well, it came before so much. This was so influential and inspirational for so many people. I mean, there are other bands which are similar to this. Underworld are another band which are incredibly important to me. But this is the one that I heard first, and this is the one which made me sit up and pay attention. So, oh my God, I cannot believe what I'm listening to. It is just incredible. And I think even today, I mean, music has changed so much now. The sort of dance music, I don't understand it. I mean, that's a statement of an old man, isn't it? I don't understand the music today. But I don't get it. This I get. I understand it, and to me, this still sounds incredibly modern and fresh. But it's not. It's old. It's 30-something years old, and that just doesn't seem possible to me. I can't fathom that. But it is. But there you go. Left field. Leftism. Right, which one am I going to do first of these two? I think I'm going to do this. So this isn't the original version. This is the re-release. Radiohead, OK Computer. But it's the re-release which has come out, which is called OK Not OK. Because it's bundled together with a bunch of other stuff on there as well. But it is Radiohead's OK Computer. I know. It is so talked about. Everybody talks about it. But it's for a reason, isn't it? It's like Dark Side of the Moon, or like a Thriller, or something. It is just one of the finest records ever made by anyone, period. And I didn't hear it initially. I heard it a few years later, and I thought, holy crap, I've missed Radiohead. I absolutely missed them the first time round. It was a few years later. This is such an important record, and this is part of the change of direction for me, for going away from the electronics. It's still part of me. It's still part of my DNA and who I am and what I've listened to. But it started to talk to me about, guitars can do stuff again. So I was sort of coming back to the world of guitar and to appreciate what might be coming up now. And I think from there I went to listen to Muse. And from Muse, I then sort of started discovering lots of other stuff on the internet, which kind of then led me to YouTube, which led me to reaction channels and stuff like that, which is kind of then the sort of the genesis of what this has become now. So in many ways, this is quite instrumental in that, and I hadn't realised that until I've sort of thought about it and put this record in my list. But this is, again, number 9, I guess, on this list of the top 10 most influential, important records to me in my formative years. And the final record is Mezzanine by Massive Attack. This came out, I don't know if it came out in the 20s, early 2000s, 2000, what year did it come out? 1998. Okay, so it's still a 1990s record. So I remember listening to this on repeat in the car, driving all over. I used to live in London. I used to drive back to Suffolk, where my family were from. This record was over and over and over again. The tracks on here are just unbelievably good. Teardrop, Angel, which has been used a lot now on film and stuff like that. But of course, when I first heard this, it was only on this record. That's the only other place you ever heard it. They, along with, I think, Tricky and who else? Goldie, invented trip hop, Portishead as well, and that was a brand new genre to me. So I was still got this sort of guitar thing going on with Radiohead and where that was going. But I still sort of hung on to the electronic side and was interested to know what might be going on there, what the new stuff that was coming out in that scene. And trip hop was one of those genres. Wasn't around for very long, I don't think. And I think there are still bands that do that sort of music, but it was not dance music. It was electronic, but it was slow and it was moody and so dark, this music. And that is such the common theme, isn't it, throughout all of this. All of this music is incredibly heavy, without it all being sort of metal. And this is what, it brings me joy, which is a really weird thing to say, but this music absolutely brings me joy, which is why some of these melodic death metal bands that I'm now listening to, and shoegaze and post-rock and stuff like that, it all is just absolute music to my ears, because it just feeds into this need of mine to have this sort of deep, dark, oppressive sounding music. And it's wonderful. It's a funny thing to say, but it really is. So, Mezzanine by Massive Attack from Bristol. I wonder what, of all of these bands, so we have Bristol, Oxford, I think London, probably London, Essex, Cambridge initially, but London really. There are London, Sheffield, I think the cult came from initially. East End of London. One band in this whole lot is not British. Australian band. And people ask me, why do I not know all these American bands? They just weren't played, and we didn't hear them. There were bands here, obviously, they had bits and pieces of it, but they were not massively important to me, or to my friends, my social circle, my peers. It just wasn't a thing. And I'm kind of making up time for it now. But there we go. Isn't that interesting? I'm going to make another video at some point in the not too distant future where we'll do what are my top 10 records now. So some of those may still be in there, but I think there may be some new ones now, having had the YouTube channel for 5 and a bit years. The music I've discovered in this last half decade has been way more music than I'd heard up to that point, and it's just opened the world up even more. So there we go. I hope you've enjoyed that little trip down memory lane, and I'll see you all on the next video, whenever and whatever that is. And until then, this is Jim, over and out.